Transformations, textures, adjustments, chicken? The things you can do in the digital media are like magic. In the last video we learned about normal paint layers, group layers, and the inherit alpha and lock alpha features. Today we are going to learn about some digital painting techniques you can do using the other types of layers Krita has. To see all the layer types, click here on the drop down menu within the plus button of the layer docker. There are quite a few. We can divide them into groups. There are normal paint layers, masks, and special layers. We already know the normal paint layers, so let's begin with the masks. But what is a mask? Traditionally, a mask is a way to cover a specific area of a painting to protect it or hide it. Artists frequently use masking tape to make frames or straight lines. And for specific shapes, we can also use masking fluid or stencils. But masks in the digital world can do much more. Let's see how they work with the first one, the transparency mask. Here we have 3 layers with red, yellow and blue circles. To make a transparency mask, select the layer to which you want to apply the mask. Go to the drop-down menu and select the transparency mask. Or you can also right-click in the layer, go to Add and select the transparency mask. Although it may seem like nothing has happened, a transparency mask is created and attached to the selected layer. When we select the mask, the color selector changes to black and white. This occurs because the mask we have created is essentially a grayscale paint layer that regulates the transparency of the layers is attached to using black and white. If we use black to paint in the mask, we make the painted area 100% transparent. If we use white, the opposite occurs, and we can control the transparency level using all the grays in between. If we eliminate the mask or simply hide it, we can see the layer hasn't been altered in any way, so this is a non-destructive modification. Finally, something really cool is that we can press Alt and then click the mask to isolate it and view it in grayscale. That gives us a lot of control. The inherit alpha and lock alpha features we saw in the last video are types of digital masks, and we can think of them as the equivalent of stencils, but the transparency mask works more like a masking fluid, because we can create any kind of shape with it. Now, what can we use this for? I found that transparency masks are quite useful to make reflections. For example, here in this illustration I made for my last book, I painted Susie's reflection as a normal image, and then I used a transparency mask to create the effect of her image being reflected on the window. If you want to experiment with another kind of reflection, making it sharper or more faded, you don't have to repaint everything, just adjust or change the transparency mask. Also, it can be useful in animation. If you want to create the illusion of an object passing behind others without erasing or modifying any layer. Here I have a background and an animated character. And to create the illusion of my character going behind the background, I am using a transparency mask. Next, we have the transformation mask or the transform mask. Same as before, select the layer and then select the transform mask with the drop-down menu. This mask allows you to transform your image in a non-destructive way. You can use all the transformation options in the transform tool. I like to use this mask for testing corrections. Sometimes you are making a portrait and you don't get the proportions right at the beginning, or you want to change an illustration for some reason. In those cases, a transformation mask is quite useful. And at the end, if you decide that you like the corrections better, you can merge the mask with the layer and keep working on your painting. Next, we have the filter mask, and here things are getting quite interesting. When you create a filter layer, a window will pop up allowing you to choose from a variety of different filters. They are divided in some categories for adjust, blur, color, enhance, etc. One of the filters I use the most is this one, the color adjustment curves. This filter allows us to adjust contrast, saturation, hue, and the RGB channels individually using curves. We can also sort of change everything at the same time with the RGB curve. Once we apply the filter, we can modify the mask even further by, once again, controlling how much of the filter is visible, painting in the mask with black and white. If we want to change the parameters of the filter, we can do so by clicking this button to view or change the layer or mask properties. A window with the layer filter settings will appear, from which we can adjust the filter. Now is a good moment to start talking about layers, because there is also a filter layer. The difference between layers and masks is that while the mask is attached to a single layer, a special layer like this one will affect all the layers below it in the layer stack. To add a filter layer, go once again to the drop-down menu, select filter layer and choose the filter you want to apply. For example, let's use this one to blur the image. You can put the layer in any position in the layer stack, and that's the only difference with the filter mask. All the parameters mentioned before are the same. You can control the filter layer with black and white and change the filter parameters at any point. Next we have the fill layer. With this layer you can fill a layer with a color, a gradient, a pattern. There are lots for you to choose. You can make grids, etc. And you have the option to tweak and modify all of them. There are lots of options. You may be thinking, why not simply use a normal paint layer and put color or an image in it to get the same result? The advantage of a fill layer is that you can change the filling every time you want with the layer properties button we talked about before, instead of repainting or changing the pattern or image manually every time. I like to use fill layers to create textures. Let's say that you want to paint something that looks like a watercolor painting. To create the effect of paper texture, you can use a fill layer. Go to pattern and choose a paper pattern, like this one. Then change the blending mode of the fill layer to overlay, adjust the opacity and voila, you have paper texture. As you can see, the difference is huge. The texture gives the painting a lot of realism. Clone layers are a copy of a selected layer that refreshes itself every time we change the original. This layer can be useful to make effects or reflections. It's not that different to simply copy the layer and modify it to achieve some effects, but the fact that this layer updates itself allows us to make tests in our image before it's actually finished. Here I have an animation I did a few weeks ago. Imagine that instead of these clovers there are water here and the characters are reflected in it. I can go and paint the water in a new layer. Then take the characters layers, the girl, the dog and the colors, group them and then clone that group. Now I can apply two masks on my cloned group. A transform mask to reflect it horizontally and a transparency mask to create the effect of reflection. After that, every change I make in the original group is transferred to the cloned, so you can keep changing and testing things. For example, you may want to add birds or change the color palette of your characters. File layers are other Krita documents that are imported in your current document as a new layer. File layers can be useful in large projects where you make a part of it and a colleague makes another, and then you need to put everything together. I used to never use file layers, but I have found they are quite convenient to import your watermark, for example. I have a separate Krita document that is only my watermark, so every time I finish an illustration, I use a file layer to call my watermark. If I need to change it, like for example here, I use a transform mask to change its position and size, and to change the color, I press this icon in the layer to open the original document. I change the color and after I save it, the file layer updates automatically. Finally, vector layers, I honestly don't have much to say about them. They are layers to use the vector tools to add text or vector graphics, but these tools are quite limited and I don't use them very often. There are not many techniques here, just vector tools to draw lines and shapes. There is a video about vector libraries for concept art in the Krita channel if you want to check that out. Also, I think you noticed that I didn't mention the colorized mask. The reason is the colorized mask deserves a video on its own. It's a mask that basically puts color in your drawing for you. If you want a video about it, let me know. Now let's try and do some painting to apply what we have learned today. Here I have a quick sketch for a painting. At this stage, and since it's still in black and white, my main focus is to get the values I want and an overall good composition. To speed up things, I add a filter layer to create shadows, and a normal paint layer with the luminosity shine blending mode to add the lighting. Because of the way I record this process in particular, the filter pop-up window wasn't shown, but the filter I was using was the color adjustment curve from before. When I started with digital media, I used to use filters at the end of the painting to fix problems with values and saturation mainly. Now my approach has changed, and I use filters and blending modes if necessary to get to the overall values and colors I want quicker at the beginning. Once I'm content with my black and white sketch, I merge everything and start to add colors on a new layer. Here I also make heavy use of filters for the same reason. Get colors and values to my liking very quickly at the beginning of the whole process. The more you solve at the beginning is going to save you even more time and effort at the end. If you start with a good foundation, the image will work, and the rest is render details. That's the perfect scenario, of course. In reality, that's easier said than done. You should at least try though. Practicing getting quicker at the beginning of the process has helped me quite a lot. Once I have reached the point I like the overall colors and values, I start to render details. It doesn't mean I won't change the colors or lighting from now on. Just that the changes won't be big enough to give me trouble. At the end of the process I may use more filters, why not? For example, this one is called Slope Offset Power. It's in the Adjust category and it's a color balance filter. I like to play and experiment with filters. Sometimes they make the image worse, sometimes to my disappointment it makes the image way better than I could ever achieve. Another cool way to use filters and masks is this one. Here I have a character painted with flat colors. We can add lights and shadows with layers. You can use a fill layer and change it to multiply to create shadows. Since my fill layer is in the same group of my character, I can use the inherit alpha feature, so the fill layer only affects the character. Then I can paint in the fill layer with black to erase it and create the lighting. You can do the same with filters. Create a filter layer and use a filter to adjust the image to create a warm or cold light or shadows. Here let's create a warm light scenario. Paint everything with black or press the erase key to erase everything. And then paint with the white to reveal the filter in the parts you want to add highlights. This is a standard way to create dramatic lighting. Maybe there is a window, or maybe a door, or maybe she is in a forest. If you want to change the color temperature, just go to the layer properties and adjust the filter. You can also change the opacity of the layer. Just go ahead, experiment with these layers and masks and have fun. I hope this video was useful for you. See you next time.